Theft.05.
And I would like to thank some certain individuals, such as Shelley Mountjoy, which I'm here at the moment, Anthony Ellis, Larry Mendoza, and Dana Marks, who I believe is manning a camera at this moment, for their help with making this a possibility. I would also like to thank Dean Timothy Halsey of the Honors College, who will be moderating this event, and I will yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Roy, and thanks to the VCU chapter of the United Secular Alliance for arranging tonight's event. Good evening, and thanks to all of you for coming to what I am.
They might mainly work government contracts, but that doesn't make Merryweather Security even nearly the good guys. Not like
This evening, as
us.
you all already
You've
know,
got the
we're
green
honored
light to
have
resupply with some railguns they've got at Humane Labs. Take what you can and go back to the
Ancient and modern
base.
question: does God exist? There is perhaps no more contentious issue that we could consider. Accordingly, this debate will follow specific guidelines. To begin, each speaker will have 20 minutes to make his opening statement. Dr. Turek will speak first, since he argues in the affirmative. Following the opening statements, each speaker will have 5 minutes to rebut his opponent, followed by an opportunity to question his opponent directly. Each speaker will be allowed 3 questions of the other, with questions limited to 1 minute and answers to 5. After the direct questioning, speakers will respond to questions from the audience, asked by me from the cards that you were handed when you entered the room. As questions occur to you, please write them on these cards, and at a point in the debate, I'll ask the ushers to come forward and collect them, and if you would pass them. We will ask as many of them as we have time to do. Given the nature of tonight's debate, it is vitally important that everyone in attendance acts in accordance with the highest standards of social behavior. Anyone acting rudely or behaving disruptively, will be thrown out. Really. And now, our speakers. Frank Turek is a speaker, author, columnist, and founder of CrossExamined.org, an organization dedicated to presenting evidence for the Christian worldview at universities, high schools, and churches. He is a columnist for townhall.com and is the co-author of 2 books, including I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. He has appeared on numerous TV and radio programs, including The O'Reilly Factor, Hannity and Combs, and Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. Dr. Turek has a doctorate in apologetics from Southern Evangelical Seminary in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a master's degree in public administration from George Washington University, where he also taught courses in leadership and management. Christopher Hitchens is the author of more than 10 books, including most recently, God is Not Great: How Religion Poisons Everything. He is a contributing editor to the Atlantic Monthly and Vanity Fair, and has written prolifically for American and English periodicals including The Nation, the London Review of Books, Granta, Harper's, Slate, and the Washington Post. He is a regular television and radio commentator, appearing on Hardball with Chris Matthews, Charlie Rose Show, Real Time with Bill Maher, Tavis Smiley Show, and C-SPAN's Washington Journal, among others. Mr. Hitchens has also taught as a visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Pittsburgh, and the New School for Social Research in Manhattan. Now, according to the rules of our debate, Dr. Turek will make his opening comments. Dr. Turek.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frank Turek. Before we get started, let me ask you this. How many have heard me before, or this is your first time? How many of you are here tonight? How many do not respond to surveys? 3 out of 10 don't respond to surveys, Dean. This is my first formal debate. So give me a little grace if I can't cram everything I want to say into 20 minutes. I will say, however, I've had many informal debates, most of them with my wife, and I have not fared very well there.
I will say, however, that she is probably the perfect sparring partner for Christopher Hitchens because her nickname at our house is Nails. And Nails is the type of woman that if she ain't happy, ain't nobody in the house happy. So hopefully I'm prepared for a very formidable opponent in Christopher Hitchens. And I do want to say that I very much like Christopher Hitchens. I've been following him for many years. I'm kind of a political junkie, so I've seen him around quite a bit. And I appreciate his charm and his wit, and I agree with him on a lot of things. Obviously, not the issue of God. That would make a very boring debate. But I will say that I went up to Christopher just about a half hour ago, and I shook his hand, and I said, Christopher, I'm actually a fan. And he smiled, and he said, the night is young. I want to thank the United Secular Alliance. I want to thank Daniel Pendergrass. Where's Daniel? Are you here, Daniel? He was my contact here. I also want to thank Dean Timothy Hulsey, and I also want to thank, of course, Christopher for doing this debate. I think it's impossible not to like Christopher. And as I mentioned, I do. He's carrying the cross for atheism, and he carries it very well. Tonight I'm going to carry the cross for theism. And I want to point out that I think we're both trying to explain the world around us. We both have the burden of proof to explain why reality is the way it is. I have to show how reality is best explained by theism, and Christopher has to explain how reality is best explained by atheism. And I think we should follow the evidence where it leads. I think that the evidence we see all around us and within us leads to a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, powerful, intelligent, moral creator, i.e. what we would call a theistic God. And this creator created this universe and the life within us, or the life within it, I should say. Now, I'm going to try and summarize my 450-page book, at least the first 200 pages of it, in the next 20 minutes, or next 18 minutes at this point now, and that is an impossible task. That would be about 20 pages a minute. Actually, I probably can do it because I'm originally from New Jersey. See, I speak at 150 words a minute with gusts to 350. So if I go a little quick and you want to see more of the evidence, please get the book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And I want to point out that all the proceeds from the sale of the book will go to feed needy children. Mine. Okay? See, I've got 3 sons. The oldest 2 are in college right now, so I need a little help, and one of them is sitting right over here. All right. Christopher, on page 282 of God is Not Great, available at fine bookstores everywhere, says this: thanks to the telescope and the microscope, religion no longer offers an explanation for anything important. I think that is exactly wrong. I think due to the telescope and the microscope, we are seeing evidence that leads directly to God. And I'm going to give you 3 major arguments for this, and then I'm going to give you 4 more that are a result, I think, of a theistic worldview. I'm going to spend most of my time on the 3, and then I'll just mention the last 4. The 3 are the cosmological argument from the beginning of the universe. The next one is the teleological argument from the design of the universe and the design of life. And the third is the moral argument. Let's start with the cosmological argument. And this is basically the argument from the Big Bang, that the universe had a beginning. If it had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. Now, for some reason, Christians are afraid of the Big Bang. I'm not afraid of the Big Bang. I believe in the Big Bang. I just think I know who banged it. Now, the evidence for the Big Bang is good. I'm going to give you evidence in an acronym, SURGE, S-U-R-G-E. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because even Christopher in his book on page 65 says the Big Bang is the accepted origin of the universe. S stands for the second law of thermodynamics, that the universe is running down. As that sun is up there, it is burning out. Ultimately, we will go to heat death, as Christopher has said in his book. Well, if the universe is eternal, that sun would have burned out a long time ago, but since the sun is still up there, and we still have energy here, the universe must have had a beginning. The second law of thermodynamics also says that ordered things go toward disorder. It affects the school. We have to paint the walls. We have to put gas in our car. The second law of thermodynamics also affects us as human beings. When you get older, the second law of thermodynamics is seen by the fact that we all get dresser disease. That's when our chest falls into our drawers. See, that's the second law of thermodynamics. The U in SURGE is the fact that the universe is expanding, discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1929. Hubble deduced that if the universe is expanding, if you watched everything in reverse, you would see it collapse back to a point. mathematically and logically to nothing. So the universe exploded into being out of nothing. The G stands for the great galaxy, the R stands for the radiation echo, discovered by accident by Penzias and Wilson, two scientists working at Bell Labs in Homedale, New Jersey. They discovered basically the radiation afterglow, or the remnant heat from the initial Big Bang explosion. The heat is still out there. It's just a couple of degrees above absolute zero. Now, good theories predict future discoveries, and they said if the radiation afterglow was out there and the Big Bang really did occur, we ought to find very fine temperature variations among the radiation afterglow. So they sent up a satellite in 1989 to circle the Earth. It's called the COBE Space Satellite, to measure this radiation afterglow. And for 3 years, they found nothing until they tuned their instruments just a little bit more precisely and found that there were temperature variations in the radiation afterglow, and they were down to 1 part in 100,000. George Smoot, the leader of the expedition, said, if you're religious, it's like looking at God. Stephen Hawking said this is the greatest discovery of cosmology, perhaps the greatest discovery of all time. Those temperature variations allowed galaxies to ultimately form, so we could ultimately be here. The E in surge stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity, which says time, space, and matter are correlative. You can't have space without time, you can't have time without space and matter, and in effect it says that the universe came into existence with space and time together. In other words, once there was no time, once there was no space, once there was no matter, and then bang, out of nothing, the universe exploded into being. What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition of nothing. He said nothing is what rocks dream about. Nothing. There was no thing. There was not positive and negative energy, as Isaac Asimov has said. There was not a vacuum. There was not swirling mathematical points, as Dr. Atkins has said from Oxford. There was nothing, what rocks dream about. Which means that the universe exploded into being, all space, all matter, all time, out of nothing. And several scientists have pointed this out. Stephen Hawking said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Agnostic astronomer Robert Jastrow, the man who sits in Edwin Hubble's chair, or who did until February when he died, he was an agnostic. He sat at Mount Wilson and looked through Hubble's telescope. He wrote a book in 1978 called God and the Astronomers. And here's what Jastrow wrote, or here's what he said actually in an interview. He said, astronomers now found they painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation to which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, every living thing in this cosmos and on the earth, and they have found that all this has happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Why is an agnostic astronomer saying supernatural forces are at work? Why couldn't nature have created the universe? Because there was no nature. There was nothing, what rocks dream about, and then the entire space-time continuum leapt into existence. If it's not a natural cause, by definition it must be a supernatural cause, something beyond the natural. In fact, Arthur Eddington, the contemporary of Einstein, who was an expert in general relativity, said, quote, the beginning seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we agree to look on it as frankly supernatural. So the cosmological argument leaves us with one question. Either no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. The atheistic view is no one created something out of nothing. The theistic view is someone created something out of nothing. Which view is more reasonable? I think Julie Andrews had it right. Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could. That's the cosmological argument. The teleological argument, the design argument, actually has two arguments contained within it. It is the argument from design. And there are dozens of factors about the universe that are precisely designed for the existence of the universe and life. So not only did the universe explode into being out of nothing, it did so with incredible precision. Stephen Hawking has noted that the universe would not exist if there was a decrease in the expansion rate 1 second after the Big Bang by only 1 part in 100,000 million. This led Hawking to conclude it would be very difficult to explain why the universe should have begun in just this way, except as an act of God who intended to create beings like us. Not only is it designed in terms of its expansion, but the gravitational force is so precise If you change the gravitational force by 1 part in 10 to the 40, nothing would exist. What's 1 part in 10 to the 40? Stretch a tape measure across the entire known universe. Set gravity at 1 inch on that, anywhere on that tape measure. If you move gravity, the force of gravity, 1 inch in either direction, we don't exist. There's also factors about our universe, in particular our solar system, that cannot be explained unless there's a designer behind it. For example, the Earth rotation, 24 hours, just right. If it was a little bit more, a little bit less, we wouldn't be here. The axial tilt, 23.5 degrees, just right. Change that a little bit, we're not here. The Jupiter being in its current orbit. If Jupiter wasn't there, we'd be bombarded with space material. Why? Because Jupiter acts as a cosmic vacuum cleaner. It attracts all the cosmic space junk to it rather than us. There are a number of other factors I don't have time to get into, but Arno Penzias, the man who co-discovered the R in surge, the radiation afterglow, said this: astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which as an underlying, one might say, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. A friend of Christopher, atheist Steven Weinberg, who is an atheist,
Package
put it this
received.
way:
The
life
team
as
are
we
going
know
to
it
work.
would be impossible if any one of several physical quantities had slightly different values. So not only is the universe precisely tweaked, and by the way, there would be no life unless the universe was precisely fine-tuned, as I just mentioned, but life itself is designed. Let me take you to your breakfast table for just a second.